The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
That was a beautiful Napa Valley pour this morning. Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Winemakers. I'm John Myers with Brian Casey and Bart Hansen, and our truly special guest today, Tor Kenward from Napa Valley Vineyards. What a beautiful thing, and what a beautiful day here in the Valley. Welcome.
We have a lot of these nice days, don't we?
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
They've been getting better and better. We're through the rain. Do you think we're going to get any more rain?
Yes, we are, which is amazing. I think there's some coming this weekend on Friday.
Excellent.
So
maybe significant?
No, we're probably out of the famous, what are they calling it now? AR. It used to be accounts receivable. Now it's atmospheric river. Or so I think we're done with those. At least I would guess, but you never know. Mother Nature tends us to slap us around when we think we know everything.
Today was in Sonoma anyway, and I think probably lower Napa, it was the same thing. You got up in the morning, it was clear as a bell, and then started to warm up, and the fog just came in from the bay and just kind of moved its way up valley. So, but up here in St. Helena, it's beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous, yeah.
Yeah, you drive around on days like this and you get how this whole system works. You know, why you have Chardonnay more over in that part of the world, and why you maybe have Cabernet.
Right.
Here, and you see the fog come in and out, and you sort of get it.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking the last couple of years how, we've kind of lost our fog pattern and whatnot. And it does seem like last year we kind of got the fog pattern back, and looks like it's starting off at least today, kind of the same way.
I had headlights on from Petaluma to Sonoma.
Right.
And then it sort of cleared up a little bit, and then started heading over the hill, of course, going through Carneros.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, these are happy grapes.
Yeah. It was beautiful this morning. The drive over was fantastic. Really quite nice. It's a beautiful part of the world, isn't it?
I travel a lot. I've been very fortunate to travel the world, often talking about wine to groups and sitting down with winemakers and other appellations in other parts of the world. And you never get tired of coming home.
Right.
We really are so lucky here.
Yeah.
My other little passion besides wine and getting to other parts of the world that grow and make wine is fly fishing. So it's the same thing. I get to exotic and fun locations, but I always love coming back home. Yeah.
Wait, where are you going? Are you going to like Montana or
Well,
Idaho?
Obviously Montana's a great place to fly fish.
Yeah.
Idaho, Colorado, and so on. I go to Alaska. I try to every year, and this last couple trips have been down to Patagonia.
Oh, yeah, that's supposed to be amazing.
You have more penguins than people in Patagonia, and that's a fact. The penguin count is higher than the population of Homo sapiens. It's
have
true.
You fly fished in New Zealand by any chance?
I have.
Do you know the story about where the trout came from in New Zealand?
Probably, like most of the trout down in Patagonia, came from the States.
Yeah, Sonoma Creek.
I didn't know it was. Wow.
Sonoma Creek.
Yeah, a lot of the trout that's down in Patagonia came from it's from California.
Yeah.
Pretty darn sure.
Yeah. There's an article. I'll try to find it and I'll send it to you to find it interesting.
It is amazing, isn't it, that we've spread. We give them good wine. We give them some of the greatest trout in the world.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Tor, I rode over with Brian this morning, and it seemed like you have an incredible history. So, I mean,
I've just been around a long time.
I like the jazz club down in Southern Cal.
Yeah.
I really love the fact that I love your cars and being a car freak myself. So, I mean, I love those kinds of things. You have such a beautiful place here in Napa. Look out the front window into this vineyard and all the flowers are blooming and we're right in the
John was getting
starters.
soft on me on the way over. He
Spring.
has such a romantic feeling about driving through Napa because
It is. It's beautiful.
we grew up here. So Bart and I grew up in Sonoma County, but John is a Chicago guy who
Downtown.
you know, is
That's why he likes good cars.
Right.
That's right. And
It's that urban thing.
It's Road America, basically.
There you go,
That's my track, my home track.
Well, you probably grew up with a couple people in the neighborhood that have some pretty cool cars. And as a kid, you look, oh, wow, someday,
Yeah,
maybe,
absolutely.
maybe.
Yeah, now I have an SUV instead. But I look at Triumph TR6s every single day online.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get one.
Was that part of your retirement plan, John?
Yeah,
Do-
absolutely. Are you kidding me?
Do you look at Bring a Trailer?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a cuckoo site.
Bring your own trailer. But anyway, history. It's amazing. So give us a little background on your getting into wine and everything else.
Well, as you might know, during COVID, we weren't traveling as much as we normally did, and it was a good time to also, because you were sort of closed in and there was a lot of negative stuff, to go back and dig into some of that early Napa Valley, some of my history. I've been a vintner now for 49 years, and pretty much a half a century. And it gave me a chance to really look back and reflect on that. I started to put some old stories about, you know, my time with Julia Child and Robert Mondavi and people that were all part of my early years here and became good friends. And I put them online, and a literary agent, which kind of surprised me, said, you know, have you thought about doing a book? And I got talked into doing a book with a good publisher. Which
Now, is that available?
Yeah. It's,
Oh, yeah.
Got to
Okay.
get you guys some copies.
Excellent.
We'll be sure to put a link to it on how people can purchase it when we post the show.
Bart's got one if you want to borrow one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, and so it kind of surprised me, you know. I really enjoyed going back and talking about. It's really about those people and less so about me, and also about how Napa Valley. When I first came up here, the mantra was with the growers and the producers: don't let the sun set on the tourists. Get them out of here. Bring them up during the day, but we want our valley at night.
I can understand.
Yeah, there were no destination restaurants.
There were a few dive bars.
Well, you had what's the name of the one here in town? It's been there forever. El Molino.
Yeah.
Yeah. No hotels.
Right.
No there was the one place to maybe eat was the Grapevine Inn.
Right.
And the Chutney Kitchen, which is Sally Schmidt's early place,
Right.
down in Yountville.
I mean, you had in Calistoga, you had the hot springs and stuff, but that was more bohemian. It certainly wasn't people coming to buy wine.
It's
right?
where you sat in mud.
Right.
You know, it wasn't where you went for a great meal. And obviously, you know, there were some exciting things happening in wine, but it was really underground. And this whole thing from Napa Valley going from, in the early 70s, less than 50 wineries to, 800 plus brands now.
Yeah, I can't believe.
amazing.
I mean, that's 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
It really is, when you go from, and it's only happened in the last 50 years. And I was on sort of the front part of that wave. I was the vice president at Beringer. They said in charge of all the fun, because it was building up the private reserve programs and doing the really fun thing, and then developing a lot of culinary programs, where I met Julia Child and a lot of famous chefs and worked with those wonderful people for close to 20, 25 years.
Tor, can you talk a little bit about where Beringer was at that point, like the size, who owned it at the time? You know, we know it's changed over the past 50 years. Just touch base on that right now.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to reflect on that, because when I came to Beringer in the mid-70s, 1970s, there was the Rhine House, and when I took the job, the number one wine that they sold in the Rhine House was a cream sherry.
Wow.
Because they had a cream sherry recipe for a cake that was very popular at the time. Awesome. Number 2 and 3 was one called Berenblut, which was sort of the mix of everything left over. And who knows where all the pieces came from. Not all of it came from Napa Valley. And then the other one that was extremely popular was an off-dry Riesling called Traubengold. And that actually, most of that came from the Santa Barbara area, believe it or not. Large plantings that were down there at that time before that really blossomed. Those were the most popular wines.
Wow, so they carved out their own little niche here in Napa with no Cabernet.
Well, no, but there.
We had Cabernet, but that was not the most popular wine. Right. They had no reserve programs. They had, they were just starting the Knights Valley bottlings, which were evolving into some really good value wines at the time. But
more Chenin Blanc than Chardonnay, probably.
Chenin Blanc was very, very popular. Chardonnay was Pinot Chardonnay.
Chardonnay.
That's what most everybody called it back then. So when I got there, I was sort of the resident wine geek, and they sort of leaned on me. And nowadays the kids coming into the valley and getting into the industry know a lot more than I did back then. But I was studying and reading everything that was available to me and going to classes in Davis. And then getting a Vit degree while I was working. So they leaned on me to be the wine geek, because I know European wines too. And then sent me to Europe every year to sit down with whomever I wanted to sit down with. It was owned by Nestle in those days, to answer your question.
Huh.
And Nestle had bought it in 1971.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I was wondering.
Yeah, 1971. And, when I got there, I told you the most popular wines. So Nestle was beginning to very slowly try to turn that around. And it was just, it was a period of time where the spark had already been lit. The investments were beginning to be made, which is very important. And you had people on board like Myron Nightingale, and he'd hired this guy out of Fresno to help him out, whose family had been in the wine industry for a couple generations, Ed Sabragia.
And it's so amazing. Another early, wine luminary that went to Fresno.
Right.
There were so many that went to Fresno. Davis wasn't really putting anybody out there at that point.
Yeah. When I wrote the book, I did a lot of research too. It was interesting, who was very instrumental in getting Fresno up and running with an incredible winemaking department was Joe Heitz.
Oh, yeah.
Joe was really, very instrumental in getting that whole program really up and running. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Did I hear right that you used to pitch a tent up here?
Well, I was poor. I had the passion of a rich man, but I didn't have the bank account. And
because you spent everything you had on your car.
I bought, when I came back from Vietnam and finished school, I took my Vietnam money, and we were talking about it. I bought an MG B, and I just loved that car. And And I camped out when I came to Napa Valley because both the Napa, great campgrounds, and I could spend more money on wine. So,
that sounds good.
Yeah, it worked.
Priorities, John.
It worked.
He's got him straight.
Yeah. You know, I just fell in love with this valley in the 70s, coming up and doing that. Pitching a tent, getting on a bike in the morning, biking up to Calistoga for breakfast, seeing 3 or 4 of the, less than 50 wineries, winemakers that were in Napa Valley during the day, and then trying to find a decent meal at night.
And what was your favorite winery back then?
Well, I visited Stag's Leap when Warren would actually show his face. And I actually have my notebook from those days. Excellent. With all my notes.
Wait, were you taking tasting notes?
Absolutely. Yeah, I might be able to. I think it's at work right now. I could show you. It's a little white book that I have with all my notes. I was a big fan of Joe Heitz's wines. Yeah. So I'd have to say if I was going to pick a favorite, it'd be the Heitz wines. He was releasing the wines from the late 60s, early 70s at that time that I'd come up. And Joe would always be there in the tasting room, most all the time. So you'd go in there and Joe, he was very cantankerous. And
I think a lot of the early ones were. I mean,
Joe in particular, I adored the guy, but he was one of my favorite stories that wasn't favored early on was I went in and he knew that I was interested in wine and had a genuine interest, and he poured me a wine and he said, "What do you think about this?" And I went, "Wow, that Joe," and I was sincere, "that may be one of the greatest wines I've ever had in my entire life. It just stunning." And he goes, "Yeah, it's really good." And I said, "Can I buy some?" Now, the Heitz wines in those days were all under $20.
Yeah,
but that was at Martha's
Vineyard,
under
right?
$20.
Yeah.
And that was a huge investment for me to spend $20. So.
And no industry discount at that time.
No, absolutely not. You could get free tastes in all the tasting rooms. Yeah. They weren't charging, but no industry taste. And I wasn't really industry at that time because it was in the mid 70s. And I said, "Joe, I'll buy whatever, if you can give me a couple bottles, it'd be great." And he looked at me long and hard and he said, "Tor, I think I can get more money for it if I release it next year. So sorry, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer." And I just felt like I had been teased, and I was a little bitter about Joe and that whole thing for a while. Finally got over it that he wouldn't sell me that wine. And he did sell that wine, and it was over $20 when he did release it. So he made more money on it the next year. But man,
speaking of cantankerous, did you ever know old man Gergich?
He's alive.
Yeah, he's
I'm invited to his 100th birthday party.
What?
Yeah, I think he turns 100 April 6th, I think.
Wow.
Don't ask me why I know these things. But I think he does, and I think I'm going to one of the birthday parties that they're throwing for him. So, yeah.
I think that was our first stop in Napa in 1987. And our second was Heitz. So we hit a couple of good ones right off the bat.
Don't you wish you had invested in a little more wine?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know what the 68 Martha's is going for right now.
Probably.
But I'll say this to everybody listening to the show. If you have a bottle out there and you're interested in selling it, you have a buyer here. So just please get in. They'll give you my contact information before we're done here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me know. I'm very interested in buying any bottle I can find of that wine. I still love it.
Tor, you've got enough bottles. We just toured your cellar. I think you're doing okay.
Yeah, but
there were a couple of Heitz in there that I saw.
Quite a few Heitz in there. Not enough 68s in there.
And more of whatever that vintage was that Joe was pouring for you that you wanted.
That was the 68.
That was the 68.
That was the 68, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Tor, we should touch base on this first wine here.
Yeah. We can tell old Napa Valley stories. And
well, we want the stories. But
yeah, well, I'll finish a little bit about that, too.
Yeah.
So I got talked into doing the book. We did the book. I was very happy the way it came out. And then Good Morning America put it on and put the book up on the marquee in Times Square.
Really?
Forbes
Fantastic.
did 2 pages on the book. Departures did a 3-page piece on, my history in the book. And the New York Times 3 weeks ago did a review on the book. All positive so far.
It's really beautifully done, and I've kind of more scanned it than anything else and read bits in here, read bits here and there. But it's really well done, and it's amazing that you took all those pictures in a time where you actually had to go get a camera and take pictures. That you still have all those pictures. That's great.
Yeah, it's just weird that I had enough of those pictures.
Right.
Well, I've heard a rumor that
Lulu.
You're fine.
That's Lulu, everybody.
Yeah, we're used to having a dog on the show.
Right.
Many.
A dog or a diesel truck going by.
Well, that happens every day over at Sam's.
Right.
Pretty much every show.
Right.
So there's a rumor that they might actually be making either a documentary or some sort of mini series based on the book.
Oh, wow.
So we need to ask about who he wants to play him.
Right.
What's that? We've heard rumors of possibly a documentary or mini series based on the book, and so we're curious about who you would want to play you at different ages.
I think, and it is interesting. There is some very serious talk about this right now, and there are a producer and a couple of really good writers putting together this thing. The way it's going to end up is it looks like it's going to be a real documentary.
Okay.
So it's going to be a lot of old photos and archival stuff and so on. Who would want to play me?
Well,
they'd have access to some good wine, so you might get a few out there. Yeah.
If it's a documentary, who would you want to narrate it?
Narrate it. Unfortunately, they're looking at me to narrate it.
I mean, who better to do it than you?
But Orson Welles.
There you go.
Right.
Classic.
So that would actually be starting in like 75 and just doing a complete history of Napa Valley going forward until now.
It's interesting because I got these Hollywood types, and they're smart writers. They're very successful people working with Apple and Netflix and so on that are looking at this thing. And I think the way that they want to do it is last year in 21, we had the redo of the Paris tasting.
Right. Which
Judgment of Napa.
You did okay.
We did very well.
How well did you do, Tor?
I thought you'd never ask. We did come in number 1 on the red wine. Yeah.
There you go. Let's give a.
Well, here's what's great. We keep doing these Paris tasting redos with the Bordeaux's, and this time they opened it up to one South American wine.
Really?
Yeah, and in fact, I want to find something here before we're done and show it to you. But anyway, Mouton was in there, and blah, blah, blah. So 10 wines like before. I think there were 3 or 4 Bordeaux, 1 from South America, and then 1 from Australia. And then I think there were 3, max 4 Napa Valley cabs. 1, 2, 3, and 4, I do remember. We were number 1 with the Beckstoffer Tokelon.
Yep.
They were all 2016 wines. Number 2 was Scarecrow. So 1 and 2, Napa Valley. 3 was Leavel Lascaux. And then 4 was Colgan. So, I mean, out of the top 4 slots, 3 were Napa Valley wines.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's outstanding.
Well, let's go back to the wine we're drinking.
Okay. It's white. I think it is. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I
gold.
mean, the HS is this from Hyde?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we
Lulu's having fun this morning.
I think the gate's closed. I might let her out.
Back to us, guys.
Yeah.
Lulu's getting put down.
Yeah,
Or not
we
put
actually,
down, put
John,
away.
we passed this vineyard on the way here as we were coming down to 29, right? Or coming down to the Napa Highway.
Yeah.
You're right, Brian. I am a softie about driving over here.
Well, it's also, John, because Valentine's Day is in a couple days, and you're.
I'm thinking romantic.
Yeah.
There's always the dog to remind you you're lying.
We've got 2 corgis at our place, and they are barkers.
Yeah.
If a leaf drops down the block, they want me to know.
They know.
about it.
Lulu's not usually that crazy, but she's having fun with something out there right now.
Yeah.
The wine, the Chardonnay program is very small in our book, but I used to spend time in those early 70s when I was going to Europe a lot in Burgundy. Very fortunate to have access at the Domaine Romani Conti and spending time with them, asking how they made their Montrachet.
I think John knocked on the door one time and they told him to go away.
Yeah, they usually need to have a reservation, especially nowadays. But anyway, Noblet at the time was very open about how he made the Chardonnays, and that's sort of the mold and the way that we make the Chardonnays now, which is very little intervention, natural yeasts. So you're working with a microflora in an area that you're familiar with. This is Larry Hyde's vineyard. Most everybody listening to this show knows Larry Hyde. A lot of people don't know how influential he's been with preserving the clonal system that we have with certainly Chardonnays. He's allowed Davis now. He's been the guy who's really spearheaded that program at Davis, where we have all these now, that clonal material, where we can really look at Chardonnay in a way that very few places, if any place other than California, has to observe Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we work with Larry with the Shot Cluster Wente, and we're working a little bit with the new Calera stuff that he's got. Mark Aubert loves that Calera stuff. We like a combination of the two. And the HS is old vine Larry selection stuff, mostly from his vineyard and a little bit from his friends. That's about 32 years old down the road.
Awesome. Yeah, it's delicious.
And some people probably don't even know that Tor makes white wine.
Right.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
I don't think it's something that's totally out there. You guys probably don't make a lot of it.
Most of it goes to the mailing list. Yeah. So it's probably a total of 700 cases, all the Chardonnay that we do.
Yeah.
How much is direct to consumer for Tor?
We're about 75%.
Yeah.
Wow. That's such a good trend. I mean, being like Kelly Corbett said last week, it's so nice to be able to have wine sent to you. Get on a club and just, you get it all the time. It's excellent.
Well, and this is sought after wine, John. So it's not
Absolutely. I understand.
Yeah. They don't have a tasting room where they're having to sell people on Tor Cab.
No.
It's people knocking at the door wondering if they can have some.
Well, and speaking of sought after wines, how many exactly 100-point wines have you made?
I have a new.
And how many people get asked that question?
Right.
Well, it wasn't until maybe a couple months ago. Somebody asked the question, so we did some research on that. So we have 10 100-point wines.
I mean, leave it to Napa to have I have a 400-point wine. 4 100-point
Well, we did
wines.
that.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
We had, in 2018, the Black Magic, which is a very small production, sort of uber cuvee that we make. We got 4 100-point scores on that. So I had a friend of mine that's a very smart marketing person for the Black Platinum Amex thing. He says, you should call that your 400-point wine. So I went, okay, I'll borrow that for fun.
Right.
And we did have some fun with that.
We used to joke about that. I remember Ian Blessing, who was a friend of ours, who used to be on the Somme team at French Laundry. And when we would really like a wine, we would tell people that it was a 101-point wine.
Yeah.
And say, oh yeah, Parker loved this so much that he gave it 101 points.
I've done that a few times too. That is kind of fun. I mean, all of us in the industry have had many times in our careers, we just go, I don't want to hear any more of this score stuff. We all know that it's a marketing thing, really, for the most part. The scores have crept up a little bit over the years. And, there used to be two major critics, two major publications that sort of ruled the roost. And now there's so many other ways that people discover wine and then find information on wine.
Yeah.
But
which is a great thing for our industry.
I think it is.
And it's why there's 800 plus wineries in Napa Valley, right? Because people are putting, a stake in the ground and trying to carve their way. So
yeah, no, I kind of like that we've leveled the playing field a little bit. I like that you're able to access a lot of consumer reviews now too. Mm-hmm. So it just isn't a certain number of gatekeepers in there. I think it's all good. Yeah. I'm a big fan of, the more information that you can get that's honest information, the better. Right. With anything.
Well, it's such a shame spiral now that, if your wine gets a 91, you wonder if you should even put that out there in the world.
Right.
Because everyone's looking for.
Because who got the 96?
Who got 95? Yeah. I mean, 95 and above is the real target now for wines. But Tor, we skipped over a whole bunch of stuff here.
Well, there's never going to be enough time, Jeff.
I know, and I know we kind of jumped to the book and jumped to this white wine, but people that don't know who you are probably are wondering, how do you go from pitching a tent in Napa to working for Beringer, and then all of a sudden have this brand that is making 100-point Cabernets in Napa, sourcing out of the most sought-after vineyards?
Well, I think right place, right time has a lot to do with it. There's a certain amount of luck involved. At least I feel there is.
For sure.
I was very, very lucky. At the time that I came and the position that I was put in, that's where the luck is. Another part about the wine industry, and I really feel very strongly about this. The people that have succeeded over the last 50 years or so are people, at least that laid the foundation, that worked their butts off.
Yeah.
So, I was very lucky. I was in a position at Beringer as vice president in charge of the fund, and a voice in the wine industry. I did 60 Minutes. I did a lot of the network stuff where you could go out and talk about wine to large groups and so on. And then when I started my own brand, when I had a little bit of money, after we sold the company to the Australians, God bless you. Thank you for doing that. I was able to do exactly what I wanted to do. We're completely family owned. We don't have any outside silent partners. So the board of directors is usually a blurry mirror in the morning, as you're shaving. And I'm a very lucky guy. I don't make wines to fit a marketing, peg.
Yeah.
We make wines. If Jeff and I fall in love with a wine, we create a new wine. If we want to chase Syrah and Grenache for a little bit, we've done that.
Yeah.
We sort of just followed our passion, what we want to do. And the last 20 years that we've had this brand, we're winning these tastings. We're getting very high scores. We're getting the 100 points and so on. We've created a little bit of a cult, which is fun.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to have your wine sold before it's released.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good business plan.
I still love it when people send me, an email now and then, or a text or something with a picture of my wine that they had for a special occasion. Yeah. You go, I'm doing stuff that's making people happy.
Right. Yeah.
And they're having fun, and they like to be part of our family, if you will. It's how many businesses out there can you say, an owner can have as much fun as I'm having?
Yeah. And you mentioned Jeff. Will you talk a little bit about how did you decide that he was going to be the winemaker?
That's a story that not a lot of people know. The first winemaker I hired was Thomas Rivers Brown.
Oh.
A lot of people don't know that. And Thomas was just getting started at the time and just expanding at the time too, taking on new projects quite rapidly in those early years. Still, he's taking on projects, and he's doing a killer job. Thomas is an amazing winemaker. But his first or second lieutenant was Jeff Ames. Mm-hmm. He had Mike Smith and Jeff working for him at the time, and he had sort of put Jeff on my project. And Jeff and I and Thomas shared one thing: we loved to rip corks, and we loved wine, and we liked European wines. We liked wines from all over the world. We just were all highly curious, interested people. And that's one reason I gravitated toward Thomas. Thomas, in the third year, said, Jeff's making your wines and would love just a full-time project. Would you be interested in making Jeff the head winemaker? I said, let's give it a try. As long as he's looking over your shoulder, great. Yeah. And, the first, second year, Jeff was knocking it out of the park, and I had a full-time guy there just dedicated to my project. So.
And what were you making it? Was it just Cabernet at first?
Yeah, it was. Jeff and I did a little side project with some Syrah and Grenache here and there.
And I know, and I'm totally intrigued by that. And you said you might have a bottle around here somewhere, which made me tinkle.
We may have to dig into the cellar before.
But
I can pause. Don't worry.
I mean, we saw your cellar. You got a fair amount of Chateauneuf stuff in there, so we know you're.
I'm a Rhone.
You're a Rhone guy,
among many things.
So those of us that love Syrah and love Grenache, it's always one of those bittersweet things that we love it, but it's never been the it girl.
No,
which we're actually fine with because it gives us more opportunities to taste.
Well, but honestly, we'd like to sell some more of it though, too.
Right? Yes, of course.
So you guys just kind of played around with the Syrah and the Grenache. I think Danny was saying you got the Syrah from Hudson Vineyard. I don't know where.
Yeah, over the years I did Hudson. There's a grower in Bennett Valley we worked with Syrah and Grenache. I've gone down to West Paso. Mm-hmm. And played around with some of those crazies down there.
Yeah.
And I say that with admiration.
For sure.
We've played around with Sierra Foothills. Jeff's played around with Mendocino. So I've made the last 3 Grenaches I've called the brand something else. It's not a Tor wine. It's called Chasing Windmills, which is referencing Don Quixote, which is the way I feel I have gone about the business, is chasing windmills, because it's crazy in this world. You have to be passionate.
But you're the perfect sort of torchbearer for Grenache or Syrah, because you already have the reputation for making 100-point wines. And so then people would say, oh, if he's making Syrah or Grenache, he must know something that we don't.
Well.
And then on top of it, what do you think about Grenache growing here in Napa? Especially with, the way the climate is possibly getting a little warmer over here. And
well, one is don't plant Grenache to chase global warming.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend anybody to do that, or Tempranillo, or all the other things that you've read about.
Right.
We're going to find ways with trellising, positioning, water management, canopies, row orientation. We're going to find ways to very slowly evolve with the global warming here. That's my strong feeling.
Yeah.
So Cabernet is going to be king for a while. So all you Rhone lovers, which I'm part of,
Right.
Napa may not be your home.
Right.
So that being said, we all know that there are some little plots of land and people that have little secret projects here.
Yeah.
And I just think those people are the top people. I just love people like that, that follow their passion. They're going to make a lot more money planting something else beside Syrah Grenache, but they continue to do it because they love what they're doing.
Yeah.
May that always be the case.
Yeah.
In Napa, Sonoma, wherever. If you have people that can make a great wine and it's maybe not that popular, but they're passionate about it, they're the heroes.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
No, and those are a lot of the people that we have on the show, are people that have day jobs working for larger wineries, but we have them on because it's the little passion projects that they do on the side. And that's what we get super interested in as well.
If you're in the wine industry, that's what pushes our buttons. If you're really passionate about wine, it's the little guys, following true passion, true interest. It's not this sheer commercial thing in their heads.
Yeah.
Well,
I like to think that's where, I'm still at after all these years. I have to tell you, my best friends in the wine industry are people exactly like that.
Yeah.
I mean, also the new consumers that are coming online, and they are coming in online regardless of what the press says. I mean, they're going to get there, but they may also be drawn more to other varieties than just Napa Valley Cab, because they have to get started somewhere, but they'll eventually get there, right? Like, I mean, just as you said, you like to drink things other than the wines that you make. And so it's about that sense of discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what still creates interest in the consumer.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody a couple days ago from what was it, Decanter magazine, the rights for Decanter. And we got into this conversation, and I was quoted widely in the Wall Street Journal when that article came out about Napa getting too expensive.
Right.
And we were talking about other areas where, you could still walk into a tasting room and the winemaker or the owner is going to sit down with you and open a few bottles of wine, which is the Napa Valley that I remember.
Right.
In the 70s, even into the 80s. And he called it the feeder areas, which is an interesting term. But I ended up saying, it is those areas that we needed 50 years ago. It's those areas we need today. Yeah. And it's those areas that we're going to need tomorrow to keep the interest and the passion in wine.
Yeah.
So God bless the Sierra foothills.
Right.
Go there.
Right.
Mendocino.
Right.
Go there. Willamette Valley. Go there.
Right.
These are all areas where you can learn, you can taste, you can listen to other people's dreams come true.
I mean, Santa Barbara County and Paso Robles, for all those people that live in Southern California, if they don't have to get on a plane and come to Napa or Sonoma, at least they're going there and they're doing just what you're saying. They're experiencing wine, they're drinking wine, they're getting started in it. And that's what we need.
Yeah. I got a dog that's coming inside.
No problem.
Barking so much.
Sure, no problem.
I'm going to ask a couple questions about quality of fruit, guys.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and pour the red.
Yeah.
Like John is.
Yeah, pour the Cab.
Yeah.
There we go.
Let's talk about it. I mean, talking about smaller wine producers. If you're,
all of us here at the table love wine, so we can go down a billion different rabbit holes.
Right.
Since you have produced so many 100-point wines and high-quality wines, and everybody loves them, I want to ask about how you judge quality of the fruit, because obviously you're using incredible fruit, but how do you actually judge that? You and Jeff.
Well, when you say fruit, I think you're referencing also vineyard, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Both.
Because the vineyard to me is really the beginning. And you could get a lot of winemakers that say it's the beginning and the end. And I mean, here, perfect segue, we're pouring some Beckstoffer Tokelon right now. Certainly as famous a vineyard for Cabernet in the Napa Valley as any that we have. Certainly that you can have more than one producer in. Right. That's for sure.
Right. Stunning bouquet on this also.
Yeah, it's and so we'll start with the vineyard. When Jeff and I are looking for vineyards to work with, we try to. I mean, you're basing, if you can get into a vineyard that you love, is the wines that you've tasted from the vineyard. Are they resonating with you? Are they something that you want to be a part of and that you could even have any context with? The two major vineyards we're working with right now are vineyards that I've followed for, if you want to look back far enough, since the beginning I've been in Napa Valley, because they've been producing great wines since the 70s.
Sure.
One is Beckstoffer Tokelon. We've had up to 10 blocks that we worked with in Tokelon, which is, I honestly don't know of another producer that's worked with more blocks than we have in Tokelon. And the other is Vine Hill Ranch.
Yeah.
Big fan of Vine Hill Ranch.
Yeah.
Both of those vineyards had very, very long histories of producing great wines. So, you love to base your decisions of choosing that as a partner in business based on a history of excellence. And then obviously, who are the current stewards? You have the Phillips family. In fact, we're going to dinner tonight with Bruce and Heather, who own the vineyard. And they are great stewards of Vine Hill Ranch. They've put Vine Hill Ranch, along with their family members, into a really incredible place right now. That is, you could say, I think in the next 10 years, it's going to be on par with fame with Tokelon. Once people get more familiar with the great wines that are starting to come out of there with other producers again. Yeah. So we look to history, and then it's a matter of, unfortunately, as a winemaker, it takes you probably really, I think, 5 years of making that wine before you feel. I mean, you can get lucky. We started in Tokelon in 2005. Jeff and I have said this to ourselves a couple times. I think we didn't really hit stride till 2008 or 2009 with that vineyard. So it's a matter of also patience and experimenting around.
Yeah, because are you and Jeff able to decide what days you want to pick?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's very much a part of
At those prices, Brian?
Yeah.
We don't get to pick the prices.
At those prices, you bet you get to pick the days.
Yes.
Sonoma side, we're used to kind of dealing with people sometimes. They tell you to come pick it up.
No. If we're paying that much, and you're right. We have the privilege of saying, okay, it's now.
And do you find that you're picking earlier or later than most people?
We have been. Tokelon's always an interesting story. You could do a little bit of it, a short movie about it, because it's when you pick in Tokelon.
Yeah.
So when do the Schrader bins show up? Right. Or when do the Harlan bin, because Harlan buys fruit from Tokelon. Right. When do the Harlan bins show up? Yeah. Everybody pays attention. It's like your antenna's out. Who's picking first? Who's picking last? And so on. We have one year, which was 2009. We were the first to pick, and we were the last.
Mm-hmm. So just depending on the different blocks?
The blocks and how they're maturing.
Yeah.
Literally, in 2009, we were the very first, and we were the very last.
Yeah.
Tor, when I started, Milo Shepard, his family owned the Jack London Vineyard on Sonoma Mountain. And Milo used to always love to come and say to the winemaking team, I've been farming this property my entire life, and you guys been getting it for a few years, and you think you have it figured out, And his point is that he's still trying to learn from the vineyard for the growing part, and that the cellar or the winery needs to understand that it's going to be a lifetime for them figuring out the vineyard,
Yeah, and in all honesty, they could spend their lifetime trying to figure out the wines from the vineyard, and they may not have it all figured out by the time that one generation passes it on to the other one.
Yeah.
So
it's an incredible evolution, and I think it's one of those things that adds to like how great this industry is.
Yeah, occasionally I read some of the BS out there that you read wineries put out, that they have a certain winemaker or a consultant who's a pure genius.
Right.
And knows everything and is the know-all, see-all, the god to winemaking and so on. And man, there's nobody out there in this entire business that has that kind of magic.
Right.
Nobody.
Right. Not
Thomas Rivers Brown, not Michel Rolland, not Philippe Melka, nobody out there, or Jeff Ames, my winemaker, or me.
Right.
The best of us are still learning.
Yeah.
And if we're not paying attention to new lessons, then we are going backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Well stated.
And what did you guys decide? I think I was watching a tasting that you were doing with James Suckling, and you sort of kind of let it slip that obviously you guys weren't releasing 2020s. But I know that some people over here are, regardless of pick dates. And that's, it's not a conversation where I'm trying to get, ruffle anyone's feathers. But what was your decision-making process on that vintage?
We definitely knew the exposure to smoke in the places that we were picking and making wines from. So I think everything in 17 and 20 to me is really location based. Yeah. There are a lot of people that produced wines in those same locations. I've tasted some of those, and I even though we passed on it and we made that decision, I encourage people to try those wines and see what they think. I have some. I have a couple friends I'm thinking of that made 20s. One is the McDonald brothers, and they really don't know if they're going to release it or not. But, they make incredible Cabernets, and they're part of the original To Kalon. Two amazing brothers that are making some of the best Cabernets in Napa Valley. They made it, and they don't really know. They like the wine, what they're going to do with it. I personally have not tasted it. But my guess is it's pretty good.
Right.
Whether it's great, who knows?
Right.
I'm not sure that they think it's great, but they made it and they think it's a good wine. I think there might be some really good wines in the 20, and fine. I think the consumer is always going to have a cloud that they feel is over that vintage, and I think that will certainly influence buying decisions. So there's that. For us, we just did not want to take the gamble.
Yeah.
I never, ever, when I started my brand, ever wanted to go to anybody's house where they ran to their cellar to pull out one of my wines, and I would have to go, oh no, not that vintage, or that wine. I never, ever wanted to do that.
Yeah.
I always wanted to make wines, and that was sort of a mantra with me that, as I travel and people pull out or send me pictures or whatever of what they're like, that I had a wine or a vintage or something that I wasn't really proud of.
Yeah.
Because it sort of really dampens everything.
Right.
So I didn't want to take that gamble in 20.
Yeah.
But I think consumers should give it a try.
Well, it's going to be a really weird vintage because some people are releasing. So there's going to be access maybe to some of the wines that people wouldn't normally get to have because it is 2020. So they might get to try a bottle of Screaming Eagle. I don't know, for the first time.
Is Eagle making one?
For sure. I think James actually did a tasting with them last week.
Okay.
So they're going to put that in, but you're in a unique position. I mean, if you don't have to put them out, but I know there's some other producers where they have a wine club, everything's sort of sold. And then what do you do if you don't have a library to offer to people? It's a bad position to be in.
Yeah. Financially, it's really, really tough. I mean, we took a hit. And a lot of our peers took a hit too, and those that didn't take a hit and want to sell it, I'm actually supportive of them. You know, I think it's really always up to the consumer to make the final decisions on these things, and that's the way it should be. I got to say, one other producer of mine that did do a 20, which I brings a smile on my face. He's a bit of an eccentric. He's a good winemaker too, and a friend, Aaron Pott. Mm-hmm. So his wine, he's actually
the reason for the.
So his wine, he's actually got a name for his wine. He's going to release a 2020 red wine. He's going to call it Smoking Pot.
Of course he is.
Yeah, you got to laugh at that.
Yeah.
You know, since we were talking about heights at $20,
right,
and you being
crazy
in interviews about Napa pricing being outpricing everybody. What do you think about, we had heard the term neighbor pricing, where, well, my neighbor is getting $400, so I can get $400, and it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think the consumer, again, is going to be the one that decides. So if Napa, with its hotel rooms, its restaurants, with its wines, overprices itself, you know, ultimately, we live in a free market, which is, we're so lucky that we have this system that we live in. And if, you know, myself or others overprice ourselves, we could be out of business. So I love the free market. So, you know, if you have somebody that says, well, my neighbor's making a $400 Cabernet, I need to do that. You know,
more power to them, I guess.
Go to it. But if you're a new kid on the block and you're asking me, is that something I should do? I would tell you no.
Right.
Because you're the new kid on the block and you got to prove yourself first. But again, I am old enough now where I don't judge people a lot anymore.
Yeah.
But you're not resting on your laurels, you know. I mean, you're still producing unbelievable wine.
Yeah, and we're selling them, and we're not raising the prices every year. And we have a really, really loyal mailing list. So,
do you think it's silly that they're getting the price they do at Screaming Eagle and
or I mean, even Harlan Wines, but. John, there's also, it's really funny that, I mean, we just went into Paradigm the other day and had lunch with Ren, and he's still selling his wines for, you know, $100 or under.
That's right.
And then you look across his vineyard though, and you're looking up
on the hill there,
up at Harlan territory, where they're selling their wines probably for $800 a bottle.
Ouch.
Or I think it's more than that now.
Where does it stop?
Yeah.
Well. Now you're getting into some areas that get out of our comfortable wine geekdom conversation.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you start getting into serious marketing. So there is luxury brand marketing.
Yes, there is.
And I was just talking at a Super Bowl party last night. I was talking to a couple. There were, you know, obviously spouses and women in there that were talking about their May pricing on their bags.
Birkin bag for $100,000.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Well,
from my point of view,
I would say if you're able to get $100,000 for a bag, a handbag, that is brilliant luxury marketing, right?
Right.
Because look at what it costs them to make that bag.
Yeah.
So that is luxury branding marketing, and you know, Harlan. Screaming Eagle right now, and there's others in there. That is their That's their business plan, is luxury branding marketing. And it's a complicated game, because I know how the innards look a little bit on that. It's a game that takes strategy. It's a game of a little bit of smoke and mirrors. It's just a different ball game.
Yeah. Well, look at Ferrari and Bugatti and Maserati, and they've launched those at now 300.
Well,
plus,
they're
and to
no
$1.5 million.
longer owned by single families. They're now owned by corporations. Ferrari's gone public, and Lamborghini's part of, is it Audi?
Yeah.
And that large group. So, I mean, they have now entered into, you need to make more and still hold your pricing. And that's an interesting game of luxury marketing, when you can make more and you can hold your pricing on a product that the scarcity part of it, imagined scarcity part of it,
Right.
is very much a big part of the game plan.
Yeah.
Because I think it's great that Screaming Eagle's getting what it is, but that's a good sized vineyard.
Yeah.
And they're making, I don't know, they're selling some of the fruit off, I know, at least that's what they used to do, but it's a good sized vineyard.
Yeah.
Harlan's got he's making a lot of different wines now.
Yeah.
And Harlan's a much bigger brand than mine is.
It adds, all those little ones add up to a lot of wine.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And Bill and his team, he has got a great team.
Yeah.
And certainly the quality end of it is what they're constantly shooting for. But they've entered into the business world of luxury branding.
Yeah.
And it's just a different world. And I don't have a big team, and it's not my area of expertise, really. I understand it a little bit, but it's not what I want to do.
Well, it seems like a tightrope act. I mean, sometimes you're the it girl. You're Screaming Eagle or Pappy Van Winkle or Pliny the Elder. But I remember I've worked in restaurants my whole life, and sometimes when you get the Michelin rating, it's a blessing and a curse, because you get the 2 stars, but then the chef who was already going bald was like, holy shit, now we got to wrench this thing up to another level, and every night I'm going to be sweating bullets, wondering who's at table 10. Is it the critic for such and such? Or it's nice when you can, especially when you're dealing with Mother Nature, when you can just release the best wines that you can make, and hopefully people appreciate them.
Yeah, and it sounds like I have some judgment on the luxury branding brands that are in Napa.
It didn't sound
in
like
the world.
No, not at all.
But what I'm trying to say, it's just a different world.
Yeah.
And for whether it's Hermès bags or whether it's Petrus or DRC or whatever, Le Pen. That holds some very crazy pricing relative to the rest of the market around it. In most of those cases right now, you're looking at very, very well funded. There's a lot of, in most cases, very, very deep pockets.
Yeah.
And you don't need to have a revenue stream every year that pays the family bills.
Yeah.
You have more of a complex financial system.
But isn't that weird, though, is who's feeding who? Is it now that we've got this whole marketing team, do we need to keep feeding them, so we're raising the prices to build the hype, as opposed to just getting rid of them and let's just let the chips fall where they may?
Well, the people that do luxury branding well are very smart people.
Yeah.
That just like the Super Bowl. You hopefully have some pretty good coaches out there that get you to that position.
Yeah.
And they've got some smart people working for them.
Yeah.
And to me, at the end of the day, it keeps things interesting.
Right.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So that's great.
Right.
Sure does.
You know, my wife will never buy a $100,000 bag, at least to my knowledge.
Let's
She'll
hope
never-
Hey, Tor, can we go back to something you said earlier about, older Napa Valley, where the idea was to get the tourist up here and then send them away.
Right.
And we've certainly got to the point where that changed with some amazing resorts and amazing restaurants. And this is, the wine country, maybe in general, but specifically because you're familiar with Napa Valley. And then to the point of where, so the wineries were there to provide the wine and to get the people there. The resorts and the restaurants were there for the hospitality. And now we've seen a lot of wineries have become hospitality.
Yep.
Do you have any thoughts on that? And then, of course, a lot of that changed with COVID because people weren't here for a while. But as we return to it, how important you have a place to have tastings, as Danny's told us, and we hope some of our listeners will come see you guys sometime. But, just in general, hospitality, like, is there a place that the wineries should let the hotels and the restaurants take care of, and wineries have their place, so to speak?
Yeah. It's like almost, that ag preserve thing.
Right.
It's, we had some really good guidance by, Jack and some of those early people that set the ag preserve up.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't realize is that they got death threats. People say, everybody got on board. No, not at all.
Right.
It was a tough road to fight. There were a lot of people that wanted to highly develop Napa Valley.
Right.
Turn it into Santa Clara Valley.
Yeah.
Right.
And the potential was certainly there for developers to do that. So, we're constantly fighting that balance of how do you do low-income housing, traffic, all those issues that are critical issues. People that come up here don't realize that we're fighting daily battles
Right.
on those. To get to your question, the battle is, okay, you've got all these wineries with very expensive hospitality programs. How do you find the balance with the hotels and the restaurants? Right now, it's out of balance.
Yeah.
You talk to my neighbor down the road, not down the road, actually at the end of the block, Cindy Paulson,
Mm-hmm.
and she started Cindy's.
Yeah.
Been an amazing restaurateur all her life, good
Yeah.
cookbook writer. And I think a lot of people know her.
Yeah.
That are listening to this.
A big part of Napa Valley.
Yeah, and I've sat down with her, and she's heartbroken because the wineries used to come and support her business a lot, and now they've taken a huge portion of her business away from her in the restaurants. How do you find that balance?
Yeah.
I think we need to stay vigilant and realize what's happening. And think about, okay, how can we find the balance? I'm always trying to find a way to work. In fact, I just sent an email out yesterday to a friend of mine who manages a very famous restaurant right here, and I said, I want to bring more business to you. How can we find ways to do that? Okay, I'm going to bring maybe 3 of my wines to open up with some friends. Actually, the occasion was I was bringing my friends from other wineries that we want to share, just like we're doing here today, other wines, but we want to go to our cellar. How do we find a corkage settlement? Right. We know that we have to pay for your glassware and the service that's here, but how do we find something so we can rate our cellars a little bit more, bring more of our business and have a relationship with you that brings more business to you? So I did this yesterday. I'm hoping more winery owners are doing the same thing. How do we keep our restaurants, how do we help build their business just like we used to?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are corkage fees these days? I mean, in Sonoma, I think they might be $15, right?
They're around 35
Really?
in Sonoma. And I think they're around 50.
Okay.
And everyone has different rules. They do
Right.
a 1-for-1, or if you can't bring a wine that's on their list,
Right.
Is one of the things. But
those were always respectful things. Like you knew not to bring a bottle of a wine if it was on the list. And stuff.
no. I think because you're in the wine industry, you think people know that, but 90-something% of regular diners didn't know that. They just brought. But it's weird when you're in wine country, when you're in Sonoma or Napa, when people have cellars, people belong to wine clubs, and they want to bring those wines in to come to your restaurant,
Right.
and they don't understand they know what the wine costs them, and then when they see it on your list for 2.5 times what they paid for it, then they have an issue with that, and I totally get it, and I think Sandra at the Girl and the Fig took a good attitude about the Fig Cafe in Glen Ellen, which she said, well, I'm honored that you would want to bring in that special bottle of wine to have with my food. But at the end of the day, alcohol, especially liquor, but then wine is number 1 and 2 of what restaurants make money on. I mean, the food is probably third. It's liquor sales and then wine sales. So to keep them in business, you have to sell liquor and you have to sell wine.
Hey, I'm always buying McLaren Syrah by the glass at the Girl and the Fig.
If they have it.
I'm into it. That's it. I mean, I support those guys. I can't remember the last time I took a bottle into a place.
Yeah. But everyone's got to eat. So it's just a matter of figuring out. And I like that you called the restaurant owner and said, because I would appreciate that if I was running a wine program and someone called me, and I would say, of course, we want you to come in and frequent the establishment and bring maybe bring someone who's never been here before. And so they can kind of see what it is that we do here that's cool and different. And you got to have Robert Kamen does the same thing in Sonoma. I don't think he's ever bought a bottle of wine off a wine list of any restaurant that I've worked at. He brings in 3 or 4 different bottles and he even opens them himself, which I don't know is legal, but he doesn't trust
Uncle
anyone
Bobby.
to pop the corks.
In some states, it's not. I think you might get away with it in California. I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah, he doesn't trust many people popping those corks, but I think just having that conversation with people is so at least there's a recognition. What they don't like is when it's sort of you bring those bottles in and then you act all the huffy that, oh my God, we have to pay corkage on these.
Right.
If you have a conversation with the person who's leading the wine program or the owner of the restaurant and everyone's fine with what's happening, then it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about what we're drinking now?
Yeah, this is the Beckstoffer Tokelon 19. As I said, we've worked. What's that?
It's damn good.
Yeah, it's damn good.
Yeah.
I
certainly
agree. I'll
is.
put it on the pour a little bit here and put it on the Lazy Susan here for everybody.
Yeah, maybe talk about the difference between the 19 and the 18 because the
different vintages and the wines. Yeah, for sure. And that's what certainly keeps, as a winemaker, keeps me fascinated is they're not dramatically different, but there are little things that are different. In 18, we kept the Cab Franc separate with a little bit of co-fermenting. And in 19, which is the only time we've done that before, was in 16, which won that redoing the Paris tasting. Jeff and I, and this is the great thing about not having a board of directors or whatever that tell you that you got to do the same thing every year. We felt the best Tokelon that we could make was actually all the blocks together, which is very rare.
Right. And was that the first time you'd ever done that?
Again, 16, other than a little bit of Franc that we kept off to the side, 16 was everything in.
Okay.
19 was everything in with all the Franc in there.
Right.
So yes, it was maybe the first time everything was in there.
Yeah.
I mean, marketing people would love that. Oh yes, not another SKU and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But let's take 2009, we made I think 5 different Tokelons, which confused everybody. Yeah. But we had fun confusing.
Well,
I love confusing people.
Well, and that would be fun for the geeks because then they'd want to get them all and see the differences between the blocks.
And I'm a geek, so
totally. Here.
these are beautiful wines. Congratulations. I mean, this is my fallback taste right here. I mean, this
John
is what I grew up on.
John is a cab slut.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he lives in Sonoma. Wow.
I know.
Wow. Ugh.
Yeah, but that's what we used to drink when we went out in Chicago. Because we were always going to a steakhouse, quote unquote. And
Right,
you know,
of course.
They had some beautiful wines.
You had a budget to entertain people.
I did.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's the ad agency business.
Right.
You know, you entertain.
Yeah.
How long have you known Andy Beckstoffer?
Andy and I actually crossed paths many times over at least 40 years of our life.
And then you started buying grapes from him right when you started?
2005 was the first time we started to work together.
Yeah.
And and it's an interesting business in that with Andy and Betty, they're friends.
Yeah.
I mean, we do the business and we keep business, as business.
Right.
But we're friends. And, Bruce and Heather, I consider Vine Hill Ranch friends.
Yeah.
I've said this time and time again, is that the wine business at its best and probably most productive and probably at the highest level of its quality potential is a complete business about relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not about widgets. It's not about who's going to give you the highest price. Andy or Bruce could anytime go to other people that would pay them more.
Yeah.
And Andy's getting a lot of money, and Bruce is getting a lot of money too for those grapes. They're getting a lot of money, but they could if they want to do a bidding war thing, they could get more if they wanted to do that. But they want to work with people that they can trust, and year in and year out feel like they've got a good relationship. It's solid, it's on firm ground, and there's trust involved.
Right.
And that's worth a lot of money right there.
Yeah.
And
On both sides.
This is kind of a similar conversation that we had with Brene Royal, who's running Monte Rosso. Is she's starting to let people into that vineyard, but it's all based upon what are you doing with my grapes.
Right.
She wants to make sure that you're being
That's
a
an
good
interesting
steward of the
concept.
brand.
Yeah,
Right.
it really is.
Yeah,
And they want it. They're very tight about that too.
for sure, as you should be.
And they've rejected people.
Yeah.
No, you're not making good wine with my grapes.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point that if he wanted to open up to a bidding war, there's certainly people there that are not getting as much as they would like. And they would probably, yeah, you're right. They would happily pay more to get more.
There's that aspect too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But just to touch on this, I mean, the Tocolon is, I think, one of the wines that we think of when we think of Tor. But then also you have that, you're sourcing from that beautiful vineyard that's right below Dalla Valle.
Tia Roja.
Terra, beautiful, really unique signature wine. And then I think you're also, I don't know if you're still doing
Pritchard
work
Hill.
from Pritchard Hill.
Yeah, Melanson.
Yeah.
So we do a little Melanson. We're working with a new one right next to Linda, a little smaller, but I think brilliantly farmed, called Double H Harder Ranch, which is literally Linda's neighbor there. So we're experimenting around a little bit here and there. Where we fooled around with and looking at a piece that Harlan's in and Ochendo and a few others, which is what they call upper range, which is a new thing. So part of the wine business is also, all right, let's see what else.
Yeah.
So we're playing around.
Yeah.
We're playing around with new things. Whether they make the cut or not is always an issue.
Right.
Well, I'll expand on that. What's in the future for Tor?
Or you.
Yeah, Tor.
Not just the brand, but yeah.
Well, I'm at a certain age right now where I'm not going to be on the planet for the same age that I'm at for the number of years. I think that's a foregone conclusion. My kids, I've always encouraged the kids. I have two kids. I have a son and daughter, and they're in their 30s, and they're, despite all my efforts to screw them up, they actually ended up being incredible people. One's in film, and actually does music on the side. He's, I think, released his 3rd album right now.
So skipped a generation.
Yeah, there you go. He much better musician than I ever was.
Yeah.
And
can you shout out the name of his?
Yeah. Anybody wants to go? He's got a couple new releases. Cooper, as in Cooper, Cooper, Kenward, Kenward. He worked with a band early on called Glass Mountain Rodeo. We have Glass Mountain here, and anyway, so there's some older stuff in there, but he's doing a film. He's going to start a film project with a company that's doing something with what's her name right now? Anyway, she's a famous actress. So he's doing the film thing to pay the bills, the music thing from passion. Yeah. And my daughter's she went to UCSF, got a degree as nurse practitioner, and is practicing in the Bay Area.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2nd grandkid coming.
Nice.
So
congrats.
So remains to be seen if they want to come back and get into this part of the business.
When they need help, I'm here.
Right. Yeah.
If they ever want to get in the business, I'll mentor.
Yeah.
But I ain't going to push them at all.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with me and my wife, Susan. We've always encouraged them just to do what you really, in your heart of hearts, want to do. Molly's always been I can't tell you how many animals and pets that we had that she was taking care of growing up. The number it was like Noah's Ark at our house. and Cooper's always been, he was like 6-7 years old when he was making films.
Yeah.
And that's what they love doing.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
What was it like working closely with Julia Child?
Julia was, I think where Julia and I really had our best times is when we were talking about things other than food and wine. We talk about people, we talk about politics, we would talk about the state of the restaurant industry and the state of the wine business more than, that's 100-point wine, or right. That was the greatest meal I've ever had. She was, and I write about this a little bit. Julia had something, and she sort of taught me how important it is. She was always curious.
Yeah.
She was not, despite all that research and those amazing books that she wrote, especially those tomes on French cuisine that she did with Simone Beck. But despite all that time that she spent digging in and researching and testing and so on those recipes and writing those books, she remained curious on what people were doing. Yeah. It wasn't like, okay, I'm always going to be locked into this French cuisine thing. No, she was interested in what all these chefs were doing all the time. Fusion cuisine. She had her opinions, but she was really interested in trying it. We'd go to restaurants. She'd go back in the kitchen and she would literally, which thrilled the chefs.
Yeah, I bet.
What are you doing? What are you interested in?
Yeah.
What's really interesting you right now?
Yeah.
She would do that.
Yeah.
It was so
Did you see the movie about her, and did you love it as much as my wife and I did?
Which one? Oh, it's Julia or something like that?
Yes.
What's her name? That's the actress.
Can't even tell you.
Yeah. I have to say, she channeled Julia. It was uncanny. And that's why we got to remember her name.
I'll look it up.
Bart's on it.
I don't know. There's certain things that, characteristics that you didn't say that you knew, but man, she did an amazing job of certainly channeling the voice and a lot of the mannerisms.
Yeah. She was no slacky Meryl Streep.
Right.
Okay, there you go. That's
Yeah.
right.
She's
Somebody we
She's
should
easy
have
to
all
forget.
known, yeah.
Merrill, I hope you never hear this, but
Yeah, right?
you're somewhat of a freak that you can do that.
Yeah.
We certainly enjoyed it, and it brought her into our conversations a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia, and that whole relationship with Julia and people like the other Julia in that was kind of honest. And this Julia she did not like to sit down at dinner with people that put her on a pedestal, especially other women. It made her really uncomfortable, and she had enough of that. So I can understand. I think that's part of the book and maybe part of the movie is that she didn't really respond much to this woman.
She didn't like fangirls.
No, we went to dinner many times. I sat next to her most of those times. She did not want to have fangirls real close to her.
And that was one of my favorite things growing up was watching on KQED with her and Jacques Pepin.
Yeah.
Where, she would just ride him constantly.
Those two got along really well.
It was some of the best television I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, well, they got along very well.
Yeah.
And,
and Jacques was a good sport in dealing with her because you could tell the two of them really loved each other, but just the way she would sort of boss him around the kitchen was one of the best things ever.
Yeah.
So there's a show on one of the cooking networks, and it's called La Peach, and it's this family who bought Julia's house in southern France, where the kitchen was, and they have a cooking school there. And they invite people, and you can sign up to go cook there. You actually cook in the kitchen, and they use no recipes. They like to say they cook as Julia cooked, just going to the local markets, buying what's seasonal. You might enjoy the show just because of knowing her. And
how do you spell
they reference Peetch. And I think maybe that was the name of the house. It's a great show to check out. So.
Yeah, I never visited her when she was in the south of France, but I visited her when she was in Boston, the Boston area. She had a lovely house there and wonderful kitchen.
Yeah, they do a great job just paying respect to her and kind of her ideas about cooking. And it's all, the kitchen is as it was when it was on the TV show. It's really something. So anyway.
Yeah, bare bones.
I wanted to ask, we talked a little bit about the growth of Napa.
Right.
In your own mind, your own fantasy, your own direction, how do you see the future growing? What would you like to see here in 20 years?
And do you have a secret way to get through St. Helena in September?
Tunnels?
Is there some
tunnel?
gate codes that we need to know?
If I told you, they'd kill me. Yeah, I would love to see that we could find a way to, once we get back up and rolling again. Before COVID, what you would do is almost from 3 to 6 o'clock going south, you would have all those traffic because you had all the workers. And, we have a lot of problems that most areas like this that are very popular destinations to visit have, which is we don't really have any low income housing.
Right.
So I would love it if we could find solutions to that. No one wants it next to them. That has just spent as much money as they probably spent to get a place in Napa Valley. But we have to figure that out. We have to figure out traffic corridors too. I would love to see a little bit more. These are easy things to say, very hard things to solve. Yeah. But you asked me. You asked me a fantasy.
Absolutely. I want to know yours.
I would love to see low-income housing. I would love to see traffic mitigation. I would love to see anybody that wants to overdevelop an area that doesn't have those solutions already in place before they develop those areas, not to be able to develop those areas. Yeah. If they get them in place, develop those areas if you want to in the appropriate ways to develop. There's not a lot left to develop in the Napa Valley or surrounding areas.
Right.
It's a pretty small as far as wine regions go, I just looked yesterday, and I think it was the number. We have 470 something thousand vine producing acres in Bordeaux, and we're 1/6 of that here in the Napa Valley. We're about 1/6 in vine that Bordeaux is. So it's a tight little area as far as, we produce, and you probably know this number, 4% Mas o Menos, but of the wines from California comes from Napa. It's defined. So it's a very limited resource right now.
Yeah.
So how do you figure out labor, low-income housing? How do you figure out traffic? How do you keep agriculture the primary driver of all of this? Don't destroy the golden egg out there with all this. I think everybody's always, and these articles are coming out and so on about pricing. Fair market will decide that.
Yeah. Do you ever get over to Sonoma?
I love Sonoma.
Are you familiar with Glen Ellen?
I am. I spent a lot of time cutting my teeth hanging out with some of those people over in that part of the planet.
We're going through the same thing. The Sonoma Developmental Center, which was about 12 or 1,500 acres, has been, it's California state property, and they are selling it to a developer. And now they've come down to, they want to develop, I think, about 300 of those acres and put 750 plus homes in. There's one 2-lane road, Arnold Drive, in and out, and they always are being evacuated. Over the last few years, it's been very heavy there.
2017.
Yeah. And there's no talk about the infrastructure that they're going to put. Where are they going to put a secondary road, a 4-lane if they need, it's crazy. Highway 12 is a 2-lane between Sonoma and Santa Rosa. That's it.
All right.
There was many years ago, there was talk of Highway 12 being 4 lanes, right? From Santa Rosa down to Highway 37.
Right.
And that never happened, but,
eminent domain. You kind of just have to take it.
We'll see.
Look at how many homes up by Oakbrook or Oakmont that are right up to, the fence line.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Yeah. And look at how long they took to widen 101.
Yeah.
That's been since I've been here 12 years ago.
Well, on the positive side, John, that's jobs. So
absolutely. I'm just wondering how the hell they're going to do it, actually, which is what Tor's saying.
Yeah.
How do you manage this?
Same issues they're dealing with here. They got the 2 roads that are dealing with the.
You got 29 in Silverado, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And both 2 lanes.
Yeah.
Which is a while.
So what we recommend is come here in January, February.
Yep.
Right.
It's a great time to come.
We
were just
off season.
We started this conversation looking out at the vineyard and your beautiful drive here.
Yep.
It's a stunning time to come.
Yeah. And if people want to come, can they actually come and taste some of these wines?
Yes, at Wheeler Farms, appointment only. Just Tor Wines, or actually visit at Tor Wines. They better not. They can contact me if they want to.
Okay.
It's a limited resource.
Yeah.
But it's there, and I think I think our hospitality programs are good ones.
Yeah.
How do they contact you? What's your social media stuff?
I think it's just Tor Wines.
.com?
And I will tell you right up front, I do not manage the social media. I'll be very candid, and somebody's going to get angry at me. I don't look at it. But that's just me.
People do.
I know, and that's why I have somebody that.
Your team though is doing a good job. Your website is very good.
But the website I am interested in websites and that they work and communicate well. So I do websites, but I don't do social media that well.
Well, you and I are pretty much the same age. And,
we are, and
I'm the boomer in our group, and I do Facebook, and everybody else is on IG and Twitter and all that. I follow a lot of people, but I don't post a lot.
Yeah.
What haven't we asked you today?
We haven't talked about satellite balloons.
Good.
Where's your next fishing trip to?
Yeah, what's that?
Where's your next fishing trip to?
The next one that's on the calendar is to Alaska.
Awesome.
Nice.
So, but man, I'd love to get something in Montana or one of the neighboring states, or maybe even up to the McCloud.
Yeah.
You were talking about the origin of a lot of the trout that's sort of, populated the world, and it's the McCloud.
Yeah, right. The McCloud also, yeah.
Yeah, McCloud, a lot of the McCloud is really what dominates down in Chile and Argentina right now.
Have you ever fished the Fall River?
Never have. I've heard great things about it, but personally, I never have.
Yeah, check it out sometime. It's very different because it's a spring-fed creek, and you have to fish it from a boat because there's no land access because it rolls right into farmland. And the water is so clear because it's not rough water. It's so clear you see the fish. And of course, they look huge because they're right there.
Crazy.
But it's just like how many fish are there, and boy, they're hard to get on.
Where is that?
Sight fishing is always tough.
Yeah. But being a fisherman, I think you'd really find it enjoyable and challenging because it's spectacular.
Yeah, that's what New Zealand fishing is really all about. It's sight fishing.
And John, to your question, there's a lot of stuff actually that we didn't cover, and I think that's probably a good reason for people to get the book is, talking about André Tchelistcheff and Robert Mondavi. I mean, we kind of touched on Julia for a little bit, but
they're all in there.
There's a lot of stuff that if people definitely want to go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, should get the book.
So the book is Reflections of a Vintner, Stories and Seasonal Wisdom from a Lifetime in the Napa Valley, and it is available online.
Everywhere.
Amazon, Apple, Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
Amazing that they are in a resurgence right now. Barnes and Noble. I mean, they weathered the Amazon, and they are coming back.
Because they were really hurting not that long ago. That's good to hear. I'm a huge fan because my dad actually ran one at one time of the local bookstores. So I will also I'm glad that we have all this online stuff, but support your local bookstores.
There you go.
Joan and I watched You've Got Mail with Tom Hanks.
And you're watching all these rom-coms. Wow.
It's Valentine's Day is coming up.
Yeah, okay.
And it's just fascinating because he was putting the little bookstore around the corner out of business,
Right.
And I, we went through that in Chicago. I was always at a Croxenberry tunnel,
The pendulum swings, John. It always seems to swing
back,
one
baby.
way and then it comes back. So just like don't get rid of any of those big wide ties or skinny ties that you have because they will come back.
Hey, vinyl's coming back. I saw you've got a turntable in there.
Vinyl's been back.
Absolutely.
That's my second set. I have a whole other vinyl system in the living room area over here. So.
Nice Audio Techniques turntable there.
That is actually sort of my stable one. I have a whacked out one that I could show you after this. That's in there. It's an old straight arm, very rare.
B&O?
No, it's one of those handmade old Yamaha ones with the old straight arm on it. It's kind of cool.
Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Wines are amazing.
I think we solved most of the problems of the world.
I think we did. I think we did.
In one sitting.
Torwines.com.
Isn't it interesting to sit down and have these conversations? It's amazing.
And that's a great place maybe to end it. I'm noticing that I think we're slipping a little bit back into the little bit of that prohibition type of thinking and talking. I'm seeing it a lot out there. There's a lot of media attention for dry this, dry that. And, and so on. There's just a lot more noise about that out there. I think everybody's got to find their own world. But the one thing I hope we never lose is the ability to open a bottle of wine at a meal, or it's rare that we can do what we did, where we just sit down and talk on a show like this, but to open a bottle of wine with a bunch of people around the table and let a few hours disappear.
Yeah.
Talking, finding common ground, maybe laughing, maybe sharing a story or two. I'm afraid that's on the verge of extinction. And I think that if we start outlawing wine or making it a little bit less of a cool thing, it worries me as an old man.
We're trying hard to keep it alive.
I think you guys are doing a great job. So yeah.
Thank you very much. It's appreciated.
Thank you.
You know, we keep growing. It's a very positive thing. So you guys got any shout outs today?
No, I mean, we got our normal stuff that we're doing, but you guys, if you've listened to the last couple shows, you know what we're doing. Some dinners at the Fairmont and a big tasting coming up, but more to come.
Yeah. Same with me. The garage tasting and spring releases are on their way here soon.
Yeah.
So
getting ready for spring.
Yeah.
My daughter's excited. I dropped her off at school this morning and she said, in a couple more weeks, it'll be like summer. And I said, no, it'll be spring. But you can tell she's already excited.
Look outside here. It's spring, baby. Those flowers are beautiful.
A little shout out to Danny Fay for putting him together with us. Yeah. We know that Danny's actually still listening right now to the recording. So we'll just leave this as we'll let you know some good stories about Danny.
Oh, he's usually taking his nap in the office about this time.
So Nap.
Nice.
You know Dan, right?
Nice.
That's perfect. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you next week. Peace and love. We are out.
Thank you, Tor.
Thank you.